Hey guys, welcome back to Honkai Star Rail. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at Danny Boy, the IMBIBITOR LUNAE. He's coming out in about 24 to 48 hours, depending on when I get this video up. So I wanted to give you guys a quick rundown of the way I think he's going to work, his pros and his cons, some of the synergies that he works with, and also I've got my food for thought section, which is something I want to talk about, is light cone, energy regeneration, and stuff like that. Now, his skill summary, I did condense it a ton compared to what it actually is. I'll leave links to the actual skill summaries and stuff like that in the description if you want to go look at them more. I'll explain them as best I can. I just wanted to condense it because, like, otherwise I'd have 3-4 pages just going over his skills because that's how big they are. Also, I will have timestamps in the description, so feel free to use the timestamps to jump around to where you want to get to. But before we get into it, guys, I have to thank Raid Shadow Legends for sponsoring this video. Raid Shadow Legends is a game that I personally first played almost 5 years ago before it officially launched, and it's changed a lot since then, introducing a ton of new characters, new game modes, and especially new bosses. And probably the toughest boss at the moment is the Hydra. Now, this thing has 6 different heads that all have different effects. For instance, we have the Head of Decay, which will cause your healing to actually damage your allies, and then it will put a shield on one of the other heads, and if you fail to break the shield in time, it's going to fully heal that head. So as you can imagine, this isn't going to be a battle that is easily won. Now, also for new players, you can get your hands on the epic champion Stag Knight along with the skin designed by JonTron for this hero. All you have to do is use the code JTSkin before October 7th, and that is it. Now, don't worry if you're not a new player and you're a returning player or a consistent player, you can still get the Stag Knight and the skin from an in-game event. And if that wasn't enough and you want another free champion, you can check out Sun Wukong. Now, this is Raid's take on the Monkey King, and it's coming as a free legendary champion. All you gotta do is log in for 7 different days between August 22nd and October 23rd, and it is all yours. So with all this and more coming to Raid, if you haven't started playing it, now is your chance. Use my link in the description or scan my QR code, and you can get the extra bonuses, including another epic champion, the Drake from the Lizardmen faction, and also other resources including energy refills, skill tomes, and XP boosters. And once you're in the game, feel free to look me up under Vulcan F2P, and once again, thank you to Raid Shadow Legends for sponsoring this video. So, skill summary, what does the boy do? Basically, his whole kit revolves around enhancing his basic attack to make it nuke the hell out of enemies is pretty much it. If you played with him in that trial version we got in the game, you know he can do some pretty decent damage, but his basic attack has 4 different variations. The 0 skill point 1, where it's just a standard basic attack that hits twice. Then you've got use 1 skill point to use it, which is then going to be a 3-hit combo. The comboing matters when we look at his passive, so keep that in mind. So if you use 1 skill point, it's going to be a 3-hit combo on a single target. If you use 2 skill points, it's going to be a 5-hit combo, which also does a bit of blast damage, which means it does smaller damage to the adjacent enemies. And then if you use a full 3 skill points, which is the max it can do, it's going to be a 7-hit combo that has that cleave ability tied into it. Now, his skill is what's going to get you to enhance that basic. The skill doesn't consume the skill points. The skill points are actually consumed on use of the basic. That's just a fine variant to it. But when you're using his skill, it's also going to give him a crit damage increase once he hits more than 4 times. So on his 3rd enhance, on his 2 skill point usage basic and 3 skill point usage basic, he is going to get an increased crit damage when using those attacks. Then for his passive, each hit of the attack is going to increase the damage he deals to the end of his turn. So that's why when we look at him comboing with, like, you know, his fully enhanced basic being a 7-hit combo, it's going to get the increased damage dealt. So you can see through his kit, he's got increased crit damage and increased damage dealt, which is really nice, and all of it revolving around getting that enhanced basic to absolutely clap the enemies. Then his ultimate is a blast hit. So once again, most damage on the primary target and then a little bit of damage on the adjacent targets, and it grants him something that I cannot say. I'm just calling it SS. It's like Sanctum Squama or something like that. We're just calling it SS, which is a substitute for skill points. So getting him to ult is really good because 1, you're getting his ult, which means he's doing damage, and 2, you're getting free skill points essentially for him to use to get his next enhanced basic. So some pros and cons. Now, we don't know his damage output numbers. We don't know multipliers yet, but I feel like a pro is going to be that he's going to be high burst damage. When you look at putting all your skill points into one singular attack, it just makes me think that that's not going to be like a normal basic attack. It's going to have a lot of burst to it. So when you get that enhanced basic, it should be a pretty bursty ability, which is really nice. Now, the other thing is, even though he doesn't have a full AoE, kind of like Blade, when we look at Blade and his carrying capacity, when he's got he's got 2 full AoEs, which is really nice, and he's got the cleave, really good for clearing trash and then also for bosses. Danny Boy, I feel like, is still going to be very good at that hyper carry type cleave play. He doesn't have the raw AoE, but provided, you know, if you're looking to, for instance, Zero Cycle, Memory of Chaos, if you get him to that 134 speed, when he's got cleave on those enhanced basics and his ultimate, if you can get him to move twice in one cycle, he probably shouldn't have any issues clearing up trash when you use a fully enhanced basic into an ultimate into another fully enhanced basic if you have him speed tuned to get 2 turns. So I think he's still going to be a really good hyper carry target, even though he doesn't have full board AoE to deal with trash. If he can get 3 cleave abilities off on a trash wave, hopefully the stuff is dead by then. And then we have him as an imaginary DPS unit. We still have, yes, Welt, but, you know, he is a 5-star. I mean, I still don't have him, so it kind of sucks. But yeah, we've got Welt, who's more of a supportive damage dealer. I don't think of him as like a raw DPS unit. He's more of that. He's more of a hybrid type unit. And then we got Yukong, who's like a support damage dealer. So we got like 2 hybrid damage dealing imaginary units at the moment, but now he is going to be our raw damage dealing unit. Great for obviously coming against enemies that have imaginary weakness, and that's pretty much it. I mean, when you look at a character when everything revolves around enhancing their basic and just nuking an enemy, your pros are going to be hopefully their damage. The cons is going to be the high skill point usage. Now, you're going to have a well synergized team which we'll look at when we talk about synergies, but I feel like he's going to have a well synergized team that can generate him enough skill points for him to actually enhance that basic, because it's kind of like, to me, it's kind of like playing QQ. You guys know I'm a big QQ fan. I want to be using as many skill points on her every turn she comes around. So I want to have a really efficient team to use with her. And I just look at Dan as probably going to be the same way as that. The next con is going to be, and once again, that skill point usage is a con if you're like if you don't have the team built right around him. And then you need a well-progressed account. Now, this is something I am not sure on. I can't confirm this, but this is just a thought that I had, is that if you don't have an account that is capable of, you know, progressing well, like if you don't have good relics, you're still low level and stuff, I don't know how effective he'll be, because if you remember from the early game, at least I remember, especially as a free-to-play player, when you're running through, like in those early stages, you haven't done as many pulls, you don't have as many characters, you're probably using like, you know, Natasha and March, and you're needing to heal a lot, you're needing to shield a lot, and you're basically not getting the skill points for him to use. I mean, at that point, you can still play defensive and then just rely on him getting an ultimate after using a bunch of basics and then getting his, like, you know, free skill points to enhance. But in general, I feel like he's going to be a bit more clunky in the early game, just off of the way I understand his kit. I could be wrong on that take, but I feel like if you do have a well-progressed account with good relics and stuff like that, I feel like that is when he's going to slot in pretty well, but we'll have to wait and see. And once again, he's not too reactive. Like, I feel like his kit, because of the skill point consumption, it feels like he's a very, you know, you want to set up your plays and know what you're going to do with skill points, and you don't want to have to react to needing a heal, needing to use a skill on another character. He feels like one of those ones that is going to be very spreadsheet sort of skill rotation, and if you have to vary from that, it's going to really chunk out of your damage. But at the end of the day, if his damage is high enough, who cares? You're still going to clap stuff. But those last two kind of work together. Honestly, all three of those cons kind of work together. And honestly, they could be not big issues depending on where you're at. Just the things that I could think of. Next up, I wanted to look at top synergies. Now, for healers, I definitely think Bailu and Luocha are going to be the best, because these two can operate using the least amount of skill points. Natasha, I don't know about you guys, but whenever I use Natasha, I feel like I skill with her a lot more than what I do when I'm using Bailu or Luocha. That is my personal feelings, and so having that skill point efficiency with Bailu and Luocha obviously with his field and his passive using of his skill, Bailu with her massive healing on her ultimate, but also the fact that it gives you the buff, which is going to heal you when you take damage. Those things in those characters just allow them to use a lot more basic attacks than what I feel Natasha can do at this stage. So I feel like having one of those two is going to be very beneficial if you're playing Danny Boy. Then we look at the supports. Now I put 5 supports here. I feel like Ting Yun, in my mind, is going to be one of the better supports to run with him, just because we know that when he uses his ultimate, he gets those free skill points to use. So having Ting Yun, 1, to just buff him in general, but 2, to get him those faster ultimates to alleviate the skill point issues that he might have. I think that is going to be fantastic. More frequent ult means less intensive skill point restrictions. So I think Ting Yun's going to be fantastic. I think Bronya is going to be good. I feel like you'll be able to play Bronya one of 2 ways. Like, I don't have a Bronya myself, so I'm not the most experienced Bronya player, so I apologize. But I feel like you could do the basic spam Bronya, where you just use her as a basic spam generator, or you could use like Danny Boy, basic on Danny Boy, skill Bronya, and then triple skill on Danny Boy. Not too sure, have to wait and see, but I feel like Bronya will have the synergies. Then we've got Silverwolf. Obviously Silverwolf, she's a fairly skill point efficient unit. She can change weaknesses depending if you're running like a 2 quantum to imaginary or something like that. You can, get that reliance. Obviously Silverwolf, it depends on the puzzle pieces on the enemy that you're looking at, but she's got the defense shred. She's just an all-round good support with positive skill point generation. You use 1 skill, then use a couple basics, use the ult, get the death break. She's pretty solid all round. Like, I feel like Silverwolf is just going to be a generic good with just about any character type, one that we're going to look at. Then we got Yukong. Yukong, obviously imaginary, which synergizes well with him. My problem with Yukong is I just find her super clunky, but in this team, I feel like in a team with Dan, Yukong is mainly just going to be a basic attack spammer to add to the imaginary break when you're up against imaginary weakness, and then maybe use her skill when you can line it up with her ult if you have the skill points allowing. She's one that is a bit more on the gray area of how exactly I would play her, but I feel like she will have that synergy, obviously being imaginary. But yeah, and you can just play her as a basic attack spam, and then use her when you see the time to be fit. And then finally we have Pella. Once again, a very skill point positive unit. You can just really truly run Pella on her basic attack the whole time. Yes, you got a tech strip if you need it, but literally she's just there to basic attack, and then apply her defense break, and that's pretty much the gist of it. Literally the supports, I was just looking at skill point positive type units that also have different effects. Like I said, Ting Yun's my number 1 pick at the moment in theory, just because of that energy regeneration alleviating the skill point issues. Hopefully we'll have to wait and see. And then we've got the food for thought section. Food for thought, I think a lot about energy regeneration with this guy, just because that ult is going to give him the extra skill points. So his ult is an incredibly valuable one. Don't know, we'll have to wait and see. I'm sure someone from the CN community or something like that will come out with a big brain thing using some sort of energy regeneration. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see him and see how energy regeneration goes, if it's a viable option, if it's something. But the other thing that makes me think energy regeneration is his light cone. Now, I'll slap a picture of that up on screen. His light cone, it's up there with like I looked at his light cone and I was like, this is kind of like Jing's light cone, where Jing's light cone just looked so strong. It felt like it was part of the character. Dan's kind of feels similar to that. Maybe not quite as big, but like 18% crit rate, 36% attack, and 18% energy regen. Now, the attack and energy regen is a stacking buff that you have to use a basic attack to get, but by the time you're at a boss wave of an MOC or something, you will have those buffs stacked to the 2 times. So, I mean, it's just like, it's a pretty solid light cone, and the fact that they put energy regeneration into the light cone makes me think it might be something that he needs, and I'm just hoping that he doesn't get clunky without that light cone. I hope he wasn't designed with his energy regeneration needs met by the light cone instead of his natural kit. So that's what I'm hoping. We'll have to wait and see, but honestly, that light cone is cracked, so that's another consideration. If you're an all-in Dan type person, maybe you want to go for the light cone as well. But for me personally, I prefer getting characters because I have more fun playing with a bunch of different characters than I do with a character and a light cone. The only one I regret is not picking up Jing's one because it would have gone great with my QQ, but hey, that is just me. But that is my general roundup thoughts around Dan before his release. I'll get back to you guys after his release and take a look at how he performs. But as always, guys, thanks for watching. Hope you have an awesome day, and I look forward to seeing the next one. Cheers.